Okay, so we got a major update from LM Studio, and now it is possible to utilize something called MTP or multi-token prediction in LM Studio. So there are some models with the MTP feature that we can enable, and basically with this, you can expect more tokens per second. So it is basically more performance, but it's not going to affect the quality of the answer from AI. So basically, this is a free performance upgrade without doing anything. So this is a really cool technology. Now, I'm going to show you how you can enable MTP on LM Studio and a few things that you need to know, because not all models can utilize MTP, at least at the moment. So let's open LM Studio and just make sure that you are using the version 0.4.14 or above, because that is the latest stable version right now that do support MTP. Now, if you want to update your program, you can navigate to the LM Studio settings, and then in the general menu, you can check for updates. And if there is a new version, then you can update your LM Studio application. Now, after that, you might want to double check if you are using the latest runtime for LM Studio. So the runtime is basically the engine that allows model to run in LM Studio. So to check that, you can navigate to the developer section and then enable developer mode, and then go to runtime and just make sure that you are using the Llama CPP version 2.15 or above. So that's the version that do support MTP. So make sure that that's the minimum version of the Llama C++ on LM Studio. And regarding which one that you have to update, I do recommend to just update all of them, because you could be using any of them depending on your system. So the easiest way is to just update all of them to the latest version. Now, after that, if you want to use MTP, you want to get free performance from this new technology, then you need to use a model that do support MTP. And at the moment, we don't have many options, but there are quite a few that you can try. So you cannot just start using a model that you have before this new technology, and suddenly you can pair that with the MTP feature. It doesn't work that way, at least again at the moment. So you have to download a new model that has the MTP feature. So MTP, I guess I need to explain it a bit. So MTP is basically a form of speculative decoding, or basically a tiny model that accompany the bigger model. So there is a bigger model, let's say it is 20 billion, 30 billion parameters, and then there is a MTP model or a drafter model or speculative decoding model, and that's probably just 1 billion, 2 billion, or 3 billion parameters, and usually less than 4 billion parameters, no more than that. And basically, when it is responding to you, it's going to use the MTP model first. It's a small model, so it's going to be a lot faster. And then the bigger model, it's going to verify, double check if it is agree with the answer from the small model. And usually there are plenty of things that both models agree. So that's basically the idea of MTP. So this used to be separate. It is called speculative decoding, but now with MTP, they are combined together into a single model. So underneath that model, essentially there are two models, the bigger model and then the smaller models. But now they are in one single model. And I think that's actually a lot better, because previously we have to find the best model, the best drafter model for the bigger model. And that's actually a research that is very difficult. But now, finally with MTP, the bigger and smaller models are now in one package. So that's what I really like about MTP. Now let's continue. So if you want to get the MTP, then you have to find the model with the MTP feature, and you can just use the keyword like MTP and you'll find plenty of options with that capability. So there are models like Qwen 3.6, and they do have MTP in the name, which means it does support MTP. And there is also there are right now mostly Qwen, and there is also DeepSeek, I believe, but at the moment it's mostly Qwen. Now, Gemma, it's very interesting, but I will talk about it later. For now, at least when I'm recording this video, mostly the only options that are available are the Qwen models. So you can download one of them. Let's say here I want to use Qwen 3.5 with maybe, let me just type Qwen 3.5 and MTP. Actually, I will select 9 billion parameters. Okay, Qwen 3.5, 9 billion parameters. So I can download the model, and of course there are variations that you can choose. There are options like 8-bit quantization, 6-bit quantization, etc. But usually the middle ground or the best balance is the 4-bit quantization. I actually have downloaded the 4-bit variation, so this is the one that I have downloaded. Now I'm going to load that into my computer, and then later we are going to compare the MTP version and the non-MTP version. So I got two Qwen 3.5 9B models, but one of them has the MTP feature. So as you can see, they're actually quite identical, but you'll see that the MTP model is a bit bigger, like 1 GB bigger. And that makes sense because, again, it is basically two models mashed together into one model. That's why it is bigger, and we can assume that it is bigger because of the smaller drafter model or the MTP model. Now, to load the model, I do recommend to enable manual choose model load parameters, and then you can open it. And I guess I'll just use the default settings for many of them. So down here, you can enable MTP. So there is MTP speculative decoding. And again, MTP is just a form of speculative decoding, something that already existed on LM Studio for a long time. Just make sure that it is enabled. And for the MTP maximum draft tokens and MTP minimum draft tokens, I think I need to explain these two settings a bit more. So basically, the MTP maximum draft tokens is basically how many tokens, let's say how many words that the MTP model or the small model is allowed to predict at any given time. So in this case, by default, it is able to predict, it is allowed to predict up to 2 tokens, or let's say 2 words at any given time. And that's actually a good balance. You don't want to go beyond 4 or 5. I think that's too risky. It's almost like you are letting the model to predict something that is far away. Like, it's very difficult to predict something that will happen next week, but it is easy to predict something that will happen in the next hour or two. So that's the idea behind it. So you don't want to set the number to be too high. I think 2 to 4 should be the best balance for most models. And in this case, I'm not going to change that. I think 2 tokens for the maximum is quite good enough. Now, for the MTP minimum draft tokens, you want to select it to be either 0 or 1, but I think 0 is better. Now, the easiest way to explain this is that if you set this to 0, basically you are allowing the MTP model, the small model, to not predict something. It doesn't do prediction at all, because sometimes it might not be quite sure about what to do or what to say. So by setting the number to 1, we are allowing it sometimes to not predict if it is not quite confident about what to say. But if you set it to, let's say, 1 or maybe 2, then we are forcing AI that, hey, you have to predict this token, this amount of tokens at any given time, even if you're not quite sure. So sometimes it might affect the quality of the answer because we are forcing AI to answer a question or say something that it is not quite sure about. Now, just to be clear, the bigger model will always double check. It's going to verify everything before it will give you the answer. So the bigger model will always verify everything. But if the tokens from the MTP model are not good, then it has to redo it again. So that's the problem with setting the minimum to be too high. What if the tokens that were produced are garbage, well, it has to redo it again and it's going to affect your performance. So even though in theory MTP should make the model faster, but if you're using the wrong setting, it might actually make the model to be slower because of the mistakes that happen during the prediction. So yeah, you have to select the best balance. And again, the default settings here in LM Studio are pretty good. 2 is the maximum and 0 is the minimum. Actually, you can set it to 1, but I think 0 should be okay for most models. And I'm going to just leave the default settings for both the maximum and the minimum draft tokens. And after that, you can load the model. So let's just load the model, and I'm going to start a new chat. Now, I guess I'll just disable the tools. That's not necessary. Now, let me ask something like, tell me a story about a, let's say, a superhero who is always late, but he can predict the future. I want it in one paragraph. Okay, now I'm going to open Task Manager just to show you how much VRAM that it consumes. Okay, 12 gigabytes. Let me just double check. I want to make sure that I'm not loading any model. Okay, 10 gigabytes. That's the base for this Qwen 3.5 9 billion parameters model. Okay, that's pretty good. Now I'm going to send the query and just wait for the answer from AI. So it is a thinking model. That's why it has to think first before answering to my query. And unfortunately, this particular model doesn't actually let me to disable the thinking capability. So I guess I have to wait until it finishes thinking and then provide me with the final output. So when it is answering my query, there are basically two models running at the same time. So the MTP model and the bigger model. And that's why the model footprint is always bigger than the regular version that doesn't have the MTP feature. And there you go. So 70 tokens per second, I think that's quite acceptable. Now, let's do it again. Let's do the same question, but I will not use the MTP feature. So I'm going to load the same model, but I'm going to disable MTP and I'll just use the default settings. Okay, just wait. It might take quite a while for it to load into the system. And I can see that it is actually consuming slightly less memory footprint. I mean, just look at that. It's slightly higher. It was 10 gigabytes, but now it is 9 gigabytes. So yeah, I think it's safe to say that that 1 gigabyte was from the MTP model. Now, it was 70 tokens per second. How about this one? Is it going to be faster? Is it going to be the same? Let's see. And later I'm going to compare it as well with the normal model without the MTP feature whatsoever. So this is still the same MTP model, but I just disabled that feature. I think it is pretty good. It is just as fast, maybe, or maybe slightly slower. Now, what's very interesting is that in the article or in some videos or announcement, you probably have seen some people talking about double the performance. That is true, but that's actually from a benchmark from a NVIDIA A6000 GPU, like an enterprise-grade GPU. So if you're using a consumer GPU, then do not expect double the performance. And I think you can expect something like 20 to 30% bump in performance, but I don't think it is realistic to expect double the performance. So that's one thing to know. And there you go. So it was 70 tokens with MTP and then 55 tokens per second without the MTP enabled. So there is quite a massive gap. I would say that's 15 tokens more than the model without MTP. Now, speaking about that, let me try the same model again, but the one without the MTP feature whatsoever. So this is Qwen 3.5, the same quantization and the same settings, but again without the MTP feature. So I'm going to copy the question again and I'll enable thinking. Okay, and by the way, just to give you another look at the Task Manager, it is 8.3. So the one with MTP was 10, and then the one with MTP but with the MTP disabled was 9, and then the original model without the MTP whatsoever was 8 gigabytes. So yeah, I think the math checks out. The model without MTP is definitely a lot smaller when it comes to the memory usage. So perhaps this is something that you need to consider if you are planning to use MTP. Sure, it is faster. Sure, it is not going to affect the quality of the answer, but remember, it's going to ask more memory from your hardware, and that's just the nature of the feature. So you have to consider your hardware if you are planning to use MTP on your computer. But I think if you do have the hardware, you have enough memory, I think it is worth it. I think it is nice to have this extra improvement or performance. Okay, so still thinking, maybe it is going to be like 60 tokens per second, I think, based on how quick it is generating each word, but we have to wait and see. And by the way, you also have to consider the system overhead, because on LM Studio it is actually not very efficient. It's going to consume a bit more memory compared to if you are using Ollama or Llama C++. So that's one thing to know as well when you're using LM Studio. Okay, I'm kind of worried that it is probably using a bit more than my context length. Okay. It wasn't able to show me because the context length limit was reached. Yeah, but I think it's quite similar. It's 56 tokens per second. It wasn't able to show me the final outcome because of the it exceeding the context length. Unfortunately, it is thinking too much, but the math checks out. It is the same as the MTP model with the MTP disabled. It is about the same number, but when I do have the MTP enabled, I got a performance boost, and this is why people are using MTP. They love using MTP because it is way quicker. It's not going to make the model dumber or anything. It is still the same model, but faster. So yeah, I think this is a nice upgrade, and I'm hoping that we'll see more and more models in the future. Now, if you're planning to use the Gemma 4 model, which is actually one among many models that do support MTP, unfortunately, we don't have any .gguf model for Gemma 4 that have the MTP feature. So during my research, I actually tried to use the assistant model, like the one that Google has prescribed, but unfortunately that model is in the safe tensor format, so it is not compatible with LM Studio, so we cannot really use it. And for the time being, the only models that seemingly have MTP that are available on LM Studio are the models from Qwen, but I believe we will eventually see more GGUF models for Gemma 4 that do support MTP. So I guess I'm going to cover that in future videos, but right now that's basically how you can use and enable MTP on LM Studio. So I hope you learned something from this video, and if you want to see other things that you can do with AI, then you can subscribe to this channel, and I'll see you on my future videos. Have a great day.